Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of Murph and Sully's Youth Athletics Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mr. Ed Sullivan, also known as Sully, and I'm joined by
Dan Murphy, known as Murph.
So, Murph, we had our first episode that we debuted on Facebook, and, it came with some great feedback. We have, as of this moment, over 300 views on YouTube.
Unbelievable. That's awesome.
Now, unfortunately, not all the feedback was positive. I have some notes here, Murph. Feedback number 1, Murph needs to get an injection with an IV of Red Bull. Feedback number 2, the viewers at home all know Murph is short. Could be one of the 7 dwarfs. If so, he would be sleepy. And, I wasn't just given text feedback. I received a voice message as well, more like a careless whisper that asked, when did George Michael get bald? He looks like he needs a nap. But the listener did say, I will stay a loyal listener. Gotta have faith. So, I know, Murph, that's a lot of stuff thrown at you. Yeah. And I know you take that criticism to heart.
I do.
And you wanted to have a moment to speak with the people. So I'm going to give you that moment starting right now. Go ahead, Murph.
All right. Well, thank you, first of all, for everybody tuning in. Friends. Everybody chiming in. Even George Michael, it looks like. But I want to get a couple things straight. First, I want to start by saying that usually, as most people know, I have 2.5 injuries, not too little. So I don't know what happened that night. It's just very relaxed and just having a conversation. So need to step up my game. That said, I want to make a few quick points that some people will be very familiar with about me. But some may think about me. Turn it down.
I'll turn it off. I'm turning it off. Turning it off.
No, you can play in the background. That's fine. I mean, no, not if you want to. Anyway, point number 1. I do not like George Michael. Sully plays him at the gym during our games because I told him never to play him during our games when I coach in my career. That has turned around a little bit. Secondly, for those of you who know about the Murphy special at our school, I'll start this way. If you are under 12 years old, it's okay to have ketchup on your hot dog. It's okay. But otherwise, it's sacrilege. The Murphy special at our concession stand should have mustard on it. I am categorically, emphatically against ketchup on a hot dog. You're sensing a pattern that the Murphy special and all this other stuff, when I ask for something, I get the opposite. So I got to start to think a little differently.
Hey, I just stay consistent with what happens at home for you.
Yes. That's true. That's so true, especially today. Anyway, third, for those I've coached, I and Sully hate the underhand layup.
Now that we can agree on.
That is a sacrilege. And no ref should ever call a foul, no matter what the defense does, when the offensive player who tries it. Ever. No fouls called.
No bailout fouls here, Murph.
Number 4.
Oh, wow.
Which is also number 3. There's only one more. This is it.
Oh, geez.
The 3-point shot. It should be used strategically only to open the floor, stretch the defense.
Wait a minute. What? You're the same guy that said that you hated the 3-point shot.
That's what I'm saying. Use it strategically. You spread the defense out. They got to defend the 3. Then you go back and then you bring it in, you pound it inside, et cetera, et cetera. But you always start by pounding it inside. You always start to establish your offense by pounding it inside. Got to establish that. But the 3-point shot, again, like I started to say, is strategic. Spread the defense out, then you can pound the ball in. Okay? It is not to be used on a fast break like they do in the NBA. Dump it out for a 3. Come on.
Are you done now?
Some exceptions.
Oh,
some
boy.
exceptions.
Oh, boy.
an attempt to catch up after 3/4 of the game are over and you're way behind, you can use it to catch up. But what that means to me is that you've been lazy for 3/4 and now you need to chuck up threes. I'm done.
So is this the equivalent of you chucking up threes in this podcast for your lazy effort in the last one?
Ooh, that's good. That's very good. Yeah. Okay. All right. There you go.
There you go.
All right.
Just like a modern day Steph Curry. Look at you. Look at you. Well, Murph.
All right. I got it off my chest. Now I feel good.
Well, Murph, today we are talking about, this is episode 2, our experience as youth sport athletes, me being a young whippersnapper in Lombard, Illinois, and you, well,
experience.
Where did you grow up again? You're from the East Coast. Where exactly are you from?
New York. And I spent a little time in Boston.
There we go. Yeah. So, with that being said, Murph, I'm going to start off with the first question.
All right.
What were the moments as a kid when you realized I love sports?
Wow. I would say the first memory that I have of sports at all is the 1975 World Series. Yeah, I was 9 years old. You weren't born yet for a few years. I stayed up every night for that series. That was between the Cincinnati Reds and the Boston Red Sox. It's known as one of the greatest World Series ever. And just to give you an idea of that, for some of you older people who know who Pete Rose is, one of the toughest competitors in all of sports at the time. He actually, after Game 6, which he lost, said, that was the best game I have ever played in at any level. That's pretty cool. So I thought that was pretty cool. Another one was watching the Super Bowl. I don't remember exactly what year. It was in the 70s. Between the Cowboys and the Steelers, myself wearing a Steelers jersey, my brother, Mean Joe Green, by the way, and my brother wearing a Roger Staubach Cowboys jersey. America's team, give me a break. So that's probably one other moment that I can think of too is I was primarily a singles and doubles hitter, but I faced the best pitcher in the league at Hickey Field years ago with the fence.
Good old Hickey Field.
Most of them don't have a fence, but this one had a fence, and I went deep against the best pitcher in the league, and that was pretty cool.
So those
How about you?
Well, Murph, as a viewer of sport, my parents were huge Bulls fans in the 90s. Now, I was born in 92, so I wasn't around for the first championship, but for the next 5, I was a part of. And my mom worked nights and dad worked long hours, and mom taped every single NBA Finals game in the 90s.
Wow.
So when I was 8 or 9 years old, I had the liberty of being able to rewatch those games and just the intensity, and the grit showed by Jordan and the way the Bulls played offensively and defensively. And they faced some very good opponents as well. I fell in love with the game of basketball, watching those videos. And from an athlete, when I played football, the first time that you're getting ready to either get hit or make a hit, there's just this like nervous pent up energy. Like you realize that you're about to throw your body into someone else's body, and one of you is going to stay up and one of you is going down. And we had this drill known as the hamburger drill. It's where both guys laid on their back and their helmets were next to each other. And on coach's whistle, one person had the ball and one person was the tackler. On the whistle, you roll up and the running back is trying to run through the defender and the defender is trying to tackle. I remember I went up, I was a bigger kid back in the day, and I went up one of the bigger guys against one of the bigger guys on the team. And he just trucked me right into the ground. I had dirt and grass on my face mask. And I remember laying there on the ground saying, "Oh, that was so awesome. I want to do that again." And I would actually cut people in line just to hit somebody or to take a hit. I mean, it just gave you such an adrenaline rush.
It seems to have had an effect.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. Go ahead.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So those are the moments that, that I truly love sports.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. Any other moments as far as maybe outside of your own sports activity, like watching on TV, whether other than the Bulls or anything like that?
For me, basketball has always been big. That's basketball. Even though I'll express on this podcast my love of football, there's something about basketball. I was fortunate enough to be able to watch the Lakers dynasty in the 2000s, specifically the Western Conference championship game between the Lakers and Portland. And I remember Portland, had all these stars. They had Steve Smith. They had Scottie Pippen, which, of course, being a Bulls fan, and just watching Kobe and Shaq dominate that game. And there's that patented play where Kobe drives to the free throw line and just throws up that beautiful little slight lob to Shaq. And he just slams it down, and the place goes nuts. And Shaq's pointing at Kobe. Just that passion, that love of the game that just really makes you step back. How about for you?
Basketball, I think, too. Besides the 75 series, Villanova beating Georgetown in the championship, the NCAAs, in '85. Very undermanned team. Georgetown had Patrick Ewing and was the dominant player in college basketball that year. They ran through college basketball that year. And Nova was in the same conference, the Big East, which should have probably tipped people off that they knew a little bit about Georgetown. And Villanova, I believe, for the game shot in the first half almost 80%. And in the second half, they shot, and overall, they shot right around 70%. They could not miss. The other big one was the one you younger kids may see on TV with Jim Valvano after NC State wins the national championship after being, I think, third or fourth in their conference, winning their conference tournament, or as the kids tell me to say, tournament. And Jim Valvano running onto the court and just going absolutely bonkers. And, what the funny thing is, like the moment you described with Kobe and Shaq and all these other moments, is where whether it's kids or it's kids in high school or it's grown men and women playing this sport that they love, that they come out and that they're acting like kids, they're acting like kids. So that's what I think we bring as coaches and athletic directors and leaders, hopefully, to our kids, is that enthusiasm. I always tell the kids I'm having more fun than you are. And that's the truth. So,
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other landmark moments in your playing career that stand out as memorable?
One I hate to bring up because it's funny because I get a hard time about this from both my wife and my brother-in-law, who say that, oh, you talk about this all the time. And the truth is I don't. You may not even know this, but right behind me,
I don't know if I've heard this story before.
Right behind me, it's hard to do it with this. There's a picture of two of my favorite coaches, actually, in my team. I'll get the wrong way.
Is that you? Is that you playing basketball with Dr. Naismith? Oh, no, sorry. Oh.
All right, I'm not that old.
Oh, okay.
But my team in baseball, my all-star team, coached by Mr. Jansen and Mr. Glover, who are now deceased, and two great mentors, won 15 games in a row in our local tournaments, and then we went to metro area, and then the city, and then the state, and then the regional, and we became the Eastern Region's representative in the Williamsport World Series in '78.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. And I was asked for an autograph by, at the time, I think the girl was probably a year or two older than me. And I was like,
Murph, you dog.
Cool. As I was crying. We just lost our first game to the eventual runner-up from California. And I'm crying and I'm walking out of the stadium. And this girl walks up to me and asks me for my autograph. And I signed it, and I was like, what am I signing an autograph for? And of course, she was probably asking the same question after that too. But
boy, how the times have changed. Now you got grade schoolers coming up with their hot dog wrappers asking you to sign them after a big game.
Yeah, and I get water for them, and you know who I'm talking about.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Now I'm just the water boy. The glory days are gone. And actually, my wife put it up there, that picture up there, and it says glory days on there. So she gives me a little hard time about that. But
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with grasping onto a little bit of the glory days.
Exactly.
Especially you're a Springsteen guy, right?
That's right. Yes, I am.
Well, I was going to say, for me, one of my favorite sports memories as a kid really didn't have anything to do on the playing field. But as a football player at my grade school, we used to have homecoming weekend, and you would get your face painted. They would decorate the gym. You'd have the entire football team and the cheerleaders packed in the gym. You would run through this paper mache hoop, and everyone would just be going nuts. The football coach would give a big speech, and then we would do the cha-cha slide, and then afterwards, something that is probably be frowned upon in the current times, but we would go and TP the cheerleaders' houses.
Nice.
And then end up with a nice, lovely meal at McDonald's. And it was just the fun part about sports, where it's not just about the sports, but it's about the memories.
And the camaraderie and all that. Very cool. Very cool.
There's also a story of me getting injured during the TP process.
How do you get injured by toilet paper? Other than the coronavirus.
Well, what happened was we were decorating one of the cheerleaders' yards, and her brother, trying to be funny, was a couple years older, came out and started pushing people, and I didn't see him coming, and I landed and broke on a glass gnome in a yard.
Ooh,
and
poor gnome. Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yep. So
got to give you a little back.
Absolutely. Hey, you know what? I deserve it.
Yeah.
I deserve it.
You do.
So, well, we have our next question, Murph.
Yeah.
One that's near and dear to both of our hearts. Who were your favorite coaches growing up, and why were they your favorite coaches?
Two I mentioned, but before I get to them, there was a gentleman by the name of Walt Matwijak, believe it or not, a nice Irish fella. All I remember of him was that he was just a warm guy. He was a bigger guy, and he's a warm guy, soft-spoken, really supportive, like just really like a cheerleader for you, but in a quiet way. But every season I played for him for 3 years, and every season he would have the kids over together, and he'd get pizza and snacks and sodas and stuff. And we would watch film at the time, a big projector. And it was always like different players, but it always ended with one, Hank Aaron. And he would show, and this is Hank Aaron in his prime, or just actually a little past his prime, but the guy had one of the best swings in baseball. And he's like, gentlemen, this is how I want you to swing a bat. It's like, this guy drove, he's the home run king, and he still is, by the way, Barry Bonds.
Oh boy!
Don't get me started. Next,
wait for a future podcast on steroid juice.
Yeah, there's your Dan spouts about podcast. About podcast, about steroids. But yeah, he was just a great guy, and it was a great way to start the season. Really got you into it, and it was like you were aspiring to something, that Hank Aaron swing and that kind of thing. So. And I guess the other ones were, like I said, Mr. Jansen and Mr. Glover, who I never actually played under until we went to the Williamsport run. And but we traveled together. We were in buses and hotels. We stayed in upstate New York dormitory in New Paltz, New York. Nobody's ever heard of that. And we had all sorts of great adventures, picture a bunch of 12-year-old kids just being silly. And we actually went to watch the movie Grease together and all that kind of stuff when it first came out. No, not the
Oh, you really are old. My gosh.
I know. It's terrible. But Mr. Jansen and Mr. Glover were fun. They were relaxed. But it was a combination of the fact that when we practice, we're in obviously the heat of the summer, July, August even, and sweating our butts off, doing drill upon drill upon drill. And but at the end of it, they were always just joking around and just some politically incorrect stuff for now. But
really family show.
Yeah, family show. Exactly. Really funny stuff. But there was just this aspect of fun and relaxation and work and hard work at the same time, but just belief that you could do. And they would look you in the eye and they'd tell you, Murph, you can do this, whatever it is, whatever it was that we were talking about, you can do this and just keep going and like stuff like that. And they were great. They were awesome guys. And I saw them for many years after, and it was just fun catching up and reminiscing with them and stuff like that. But those were two of my favorites. How about you?
I've got a handful, and I'm going to try to not belabor on it too much, but one of them, Coach Kennedy, I only had him for 1 year as a basketball coach and 1 year as a football coach. Coach actually just celebrated his 70th birthday, so happy birthday, Coach. Coach was always high energy, high enthusiasm. Like the moment he stepped on a field, he made you feel like you were a big deal. It didn't matter whether you were a starter, whether you were a backup, whether you were the water boy.
Yeah.
Right. He made you feel like you were up here.
Yeah.
His counterpart, Coach Ryan, taught the importance of respecting your teammates and respecting your coaches.
Yeah.
And then I had Coach Weber, also known as Webby, who was a strength training, track and football coach back in high school. And I just loved how he was just so caring and compassionate. Yeah. Like you could tell that he cared about our well-being.
Yeah.
And he was always willing to talk, no matter what was going on.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times coaches don't take that time to have those conversations, but he was always there and always willing to do that. Coach O'Donnell, very similar along the lines of Coach Weber. He just always demonstrated how much he loved his players. Yeah. And there's actually a story that when we get to our faith in sports episode, there's a story of Coach O'Donnell when my mom was sick after giving birth to my sister, taking me and my brothers, just the five of us, to Old Country Buffet. Yeah. Just to help give my grandma some relief as she was with the baby and mom was in the hospital and dad was with her. He didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But he took the time.
Right. That's very cool.
Yeah. Coach Martinez, also known as Bob, he's actually the father of one of my best friends. And he just, always found a way to invoke discipline, but a great sense of humor. And I do think that pays dividends when you're coaching youth sports.
Yeah. That's
cool. And then two last people, I promise I'm done. I feel like I'm on a Murph filibuster here.
I need to be filibustered sometimes. Go.
My middle school football coach, Coach Mihik, he played at Michigan, was at Glenbard East, all-state football player. And, he was just discipline. And he actually, he was funny in the sense that he would, when we started off with football, Harry Potter was big back then. And he used to have the sorting football, just like Harry Potter had the sorting hat that would tell you which house you're going into. Like a kid like me might walk in going, Coach, I'm really excited to be here today. I cannot wait to play quarterback. And he would go, Eddie, the sorting football is telling me that you're an offensive lineman. And he was right. The sorting football was right.
Yeah, right. It wasn't.
And back then, Pokemon was big. He'd be, before the weekend during summer camp. Well, you could go home and you can jump on your trampoline or take a jog, or you could just sit on your rear end and play your Pokemon cards. But he taught the best fundamental football. So much so that when I was in high school, before every play, he would always say, splits, stance, who am I hitting? Where am I taking them? What's it on? He goes, as an offensive lineman, you need to know those 5 things. And if you know those 5 things, you're ready to play football.
Very cool.
And then the last one would be my father, who we'll talk about later. We got another question coming up. That's why I really want to. Yeah. Once again, this is a family show. Whoa, wait, hey.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, Murph, I think you're up for the next question.
All right. This is an intriguing one, and we got to be careful. But least favorite coaches, and why, and maybe why.
Okay, I am not going to give away any names.
Yeah.
Because you never know who's going to listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have this one strength training coach back in high school, and he was just arrogant.
Yeah.
He definitely gave off the macho jock stigma.
Yeah.
He would use fear and intimidation tactics. It just almost made you feel like you weren't playing a sport, but like you're in prison, for lack of a better term. I mean, just, everything was in this tone. Like, oh, so what are you going to do about it? Oh, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
It just, I also had a defensive coordinator in football. Now I played offense, but, he would show favoritism towards his guys, or he'd go up to offensive players and he'd be like, thanks for showing up today, in kind of a sarcastic, backhanded manner. And, I was in high school as a senior, and from my perspective, if you're trying to get all 90 of us on the same page, trying to say that, we're all in this together, well, then the coaching staff needs to demonstrate the same mentality.
Yeah.
Not making one feel like the other. So ultimately, you knew which coaches were there for the paychecks, and you knew which coaches were there to form relationships and change lives.
Yeah.
But those are some of my least favorite ones because, they were just in it for themselves.
Yeah.
How about you, Murph? Least favorite coaches?
Well, there's one that comes to mind from the past that I actually won't say his name because I can't remember his name, which is probably a good testament to his coaching ability. And he died many years ago, so I can't offend him anymore. But he played his son over me at shortstop, and I was definitely a good shortstop. He was let's just put it this way. I'm not a tall person.
I was going to say, you do put the short in shortstop.
Exactly. Shortstop. So, he played his son over me and batted him first when I had done both of those things for all my career before that. And I was 13 at the time, 14, I think. And I just didn't like him. He didn't know the sport. He didn't, it was just, that's the thing my daughter Fiona hated when she played under me in basketball, that I told her, you have to be better than somebody else to play, because if there's going to be a debate about it, you're sitting, because I'm not going to favor my kids. I learned that from him, so I'll give him that credit, I guess. But as a testament to that, I can say honestly to the camera that I always had a good attitude when I played sports. I worked hard. I never gave any guff to the coaches. I did what they asked and then some and all that stuff. But this guy, we're in a game. I'll try to make it quick. I hit a single. I'm on first base, and he's on third base. And he and I had kind of a run-in before the game of some sort. And I was just kind of, I wasn't talking back to him, all that. We never did that when we were that age. But I was letting him know that I was not happy with stuff. And I get on first base, and he looks over at me from third base, and he says, looks me in the eye from third base all the way there, and he says, "Don't steal." And I think we were either way up or way down. I forget. I think we were way down, actually. So what do I do on the first pitch?
You steal it.
Yeah, I steal the base. So I get up from there. I'm looking up and call the timeout. And I look over at third base, and this guy's face is all red. And he's like, he calls a timeout. And he walks over to me, and he says, "I just told you not to steal, and you just stole. Why did you do that?" And I said, "I don't know, coach. I don't know. I have no idea." And I just acted like it was no big deal. Next pitch, he says, "You better stay on that base. I don't want you even taking the lead." So what do I do next pitch? Take a big lead. Boom, I'm gone. Try to steal third base. Turns out that one of my best friends in grade school was at third base. I was out by a good 15 feet. He had the ball in his glove before I started to slide, but I tried to slide anyway, head first, did this big Pete Rose type dive, and landed this far short of the bag. So my friend grabs his glove like this, walks over to me, tags me out, and he looks at me and goes, "Hey, Murph, you playing in the dirt?" And the coach while this is happening, he's screaming at me. And I just kind of I laughed with my friend. I walked off, dusted myself off, and walked off. So yeah, he was the worst coach I ever saw. present day, I'll just make a couple of quick examples if I may,
Oh.
and I'll be careful. Coaching basketball with my girls, had a coach that during the game, he's on the opposite side of me on the bench, across from his girls.
Oh, good. This is an opponent's coach. Okay.
This is the opponent's coach. And his girls were, they weren't really super talented. And they were, they were struggling, but it was fine. They were giving their all, actually. And the coach was just yelling at him the whole time and yelling at him every timeout, every time the ball stopped. He's yelling at him. And one time and I'm just sitting there on the bench like, oh my God, this guy's nuts. And he turns, my daughter's over on the side there. You want to say hi? No, that's me. Hi, mate. And he says, guess what my daughter's asking you to do right now?
She's asking to take the car out, isn't she?
She wants to hear more of the story. No, she wants my car.
I was there.
Take the car. Just go. I'm in the middle of a story here.
Yeah,
Remember, folks,
This is my life.
Murph is always wrong.
This is when my daughters smile at me, by the way. Okay. So anyway, the coach, after 3/4 away into the game, he turns to his girls all the way across the court and he puts up his hands and he goes, girls, this is not playing house. This is basketball. Just like that. And I looked at him, and we've talked about this a couple times. I have those moments where a coach does something like that and you want to say the right thing or do the right thing. It doesn't embarrass yourself or the girls that you're coaching or anything like that. But I was so dumbfounded. I could not believe he said it, and I didn't say anything. The other coach, more recently, when I've been saying this for years, the other coach, he was just one of those guys we coached against him in the Christmas tournament this year, 5th grade, and he was just one of those guys. I'll just leave it at that. And yelling at his players, all that kind of stuff, calling out the refs, 5th grade basketball. And with 6 seconds left in our playoff game, in which they were beating us by 18 points in a 5th grade game. So the game was over, I think. He calls a timeout for 2 reasons. I don't know the first reason, but the second reason was to tell the refs multiple times how awful they were. You're awful. You're terrible. And he's doing this in front of his kids and the whole thing.
The old finger point of doom.
Yeah. And I turned to my assistant coach, John, not my assistant. I'm sorry. I was one of the assistants, to John. And I turned to the head coach, Katie, and I said, I got to say something to that guy. Like, what's he doing? And I guess they didn't take me seriously, but, so the game ends and, we're doing the shake, handshake in the line. And I do the old, our friend Jeff, let's just say. And as I shake his hand, I hold on to his hand and I look at him. I say, hey, I got to ask you a question. Why did you call a timeout with 6 seconds left and an 18-point lead? And I swear his reaction was something like this. That was it.
And the crowd's yelling, Jerry, 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 Jerry.
Well, the funny thing is I'm like, this guy, maybe I made a mistake here. This could get violent, like this could be a bad thing.
No.
And I said, you embarrass yourself in front of your girls. You embarrass yourself in front of these fans, the whole thing. And as I'm saying, he's just kind of mouthing off. And I just said, it's fine, whatever, just go ahead. And I just left it at that. I didn't do it really in front of the girls at all. But little did I know that one of the girls' parents, who happens to be 6'7", he was starting to walk onto the court in case anything happened to back me up. So it's like, I'm kind of glad I didn't know that, because I probably would have said more.
You would not have.
No, I wouldn't.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
But really quick with the other coach who said, this is basketball. I didn't say anything directly to him, but the next week, unbeknownst to me, I was at his school. I mean, I knew this, but I wasn't thinking of it. And before the game, the girls are warming up and I'm sitting on the sideline for a second, talking to this nice lady who's doing the score and doing the scoreboard and all that. And just kind of out of the blue, I said, not for nothing, but we played these guys last week and the coach was just a jerk. Like, I couldn't believe the way he was talking to the girls. And I just went on and on, and I all that. And the game starts, we go to the whole thing. And I don't know, maybe it was you. I don't know. Somebody told me, do you know who that lady is? And I'm like, no, I have no idea. He's like, that's the coach's wife. And I'm like, oh. Yeah. But for like a half a second, then I'm like, good. You know what? she needed to hear that, and she probably knew it anyway. So that's as close as I get to saying stuff. But
which is good, especially when you're the athletic director of the school that you coach at.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I went on there a little bit too long. I got a little crazy.
It's okay, Murph. We like when you get fired up here, you know?
Yeah, apparently people don't like it when I don't.
That's what I was going to say. We need high energy Murph. I mean, if we don't have high energy Murph, we don't have a show.
I hear you.
Let's now bring it back full circle, Murph.
Yeah.
You know, how does your coaching philosophy vary or remain similar to the experiences that you had as a youth sports athlete? So what from your coaches did you keep and develop into your own style? And what were things that your coaches did that you didn't like that you stayed away from?
Yeah. Like I was talking about with Mr. Jansen in particular, he was one of those guys that was always loose, always joking around, always laughing, work your butt off. But he was just a guy that brought out confidence in you. So that was definitely something that I have taken with me to coach kids. The other thing is, again, is his sense of humor he was always catching you off guard with a joke. And when you most needed it and when you least wanted it, in a sense that you were frustrated about something in the game or something, he would just come to you and he'd make this silly joke and you just start laughing and you would forget about it. You move on. And just teaching you not to take yourself too seriously, and just and as a coach, keeping kids loose, keeping them relaxed, confident, and trusting in themselves and telling them that you trust in them that they're going to be okay. And it's okay to make mistakes and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a big one for me as far as motivation. How about you?
I was going to say, from my coaches, I take the fact that they were always trying to build relationships.
Yeah.
They were always there for me, not as just an athlete, not even just as a student. They were there for me as a person. Yeah. And they cared about me, and they wanted to make sure that, they always talk about the whole athlete, right? Not just the student part, not just the athlete part, but as the individual as well. All three of those together is one. I make sure my athletes know that I care about them, and I try to form those relationships. And, the great thing about that is there's going to be good conversations you have. There's going to be bad conversations. There's going to be conversations in between. But at the end of the day, if they know that you love them and that you're looking out for their best interest, it makes having those conversations easier.
Yeah.
I know from my other coaches, as you know, I try to bring high energy and enthusiasm, right? I want my players to know that I am jacked up and I am amped up and I am ready to coach this game and give them every single thing that I have.
Yeah.
And in return, I need them to give me every single thing that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, there's a lot of things that I take that are good, from the bad. I try not to play favorites. I try to hold everyone equally accountable. But there are certain athletes where you have higher expectations in terms of leadership, but wanting them to perform at their highest level is always consistent across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But, another person that provides motivation, my father was my basketball coach growing up. And, dad is a sprinkler fitter. It's not an easy job.
Yeah.
You climb up on ladders, you throw a pipe on your shoulder, and it takes a wear and tear on the body. And I just remember my dad, when I was younger, he would leave before any of us woke up. And then he would arrive home after we had gotten home from school, clean up, change out of his work clothes, grab a quick bite to eat, right off to practice. Never complained, never said a word.
Yeah.
And my dad, put so much passion into his coaching. And my dad never played organized sports. But he had a passion just like you and I had. Mm-hmm. And, and he was big into the discipline and making sure that we did everything the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big component of that as well. I couldn't tell you the number of times that we've been doing 3-on-2, 2-on-1 in basketball. And I specifically restart a group 10 to 12 times because they're really hitting the outlet pass to start the drill.
Yeah.
I got that from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, just that sense of giving forth your best effort as a coach even when life's throwing things at you. I take that into account too, because we're both very busy in our lives and we have a lot going on. But regardless of what happens to me leading up to that practice, I know, just like my dad used to say, you kids look forward to this hour and 15 minutes out of more than anything throughout the day. So I have to give you my absolute best.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I think I kind of bring that same thing. I think I try to bring that same thing. And it's funny, my dad never coached me because I had 3 older siblings, 2 brothers, and he coached all of them. And he was always on the sideline, same kind of thing, worked hard. And I feel like, my memories of him as a kid were at my games going, come on, Danny, give it a good swing, the stuff like that, that same voice. And I remember cringing at the time and thinking like, oh, Dad, tone it down a little bit. But
yeah, my dad was similar. Ed, you got to get your head out of the concession stand. Yes. Get on back here. Let's go.
So what actually motivated you to coach? Like your qualities that you saw, not just in other coaches, but in yourself, that you thought you could do it. You could give it to people.
Well, I think by watching my dad coach, seeing how much he enjoyed it, seeing how much he loved it. And once again, we'll say this many times on this podcast, sports does bring families together. Sports does bring community together. And my family lived in that gym. Yeah. My younger brothers would come to my practices and shoot. Eventually there was this younger little girl named Sophie Sullivan that would come into gyms and shoot. Yeah. It was a family affair, and I was in high school. And for those that know my brothers, Ted and Ben, I started coaching them along with my brother Josh. I actually started head coaching as a sophomore in high school. Nice. And we had such a great time coaching Josh. Dad actually was my assistant, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. And I would try to make it so much fun. We would do these crazy drills. We would have team movie nights. Yep. Like we'd go in the meeting room and we'd show basketball movies. We'd show Space Jam one night. Nice. The one night this is a great story. We were kind of a middle of the pack team, and we were getting ready to face the number 1 seeded team. And I had a kid who was very high energy on the team. And I told the guys we're getting ready to watch a classic, Hoosiers, one of my favorite basketball movies of all time, which reminds me, we do need to have a sports movies podcast at some point. We'll add that to the list. And I started off with this passionate speech of how this group of young men from, different personalities, different, types of athleticism. And I said, guys, these guys remind me a lot like you. And the kid just blurted out loud. He goes, "Oh, they suck too, coach?" I'm like, no.
The joy of coaching boys.
I said, the underdog. I had a lot of fun with that group. Yeah. And they responded well to me. The twins, Ted or Ben, so, I can only imagine how it is to coach your children, but coaching Ted and Ben gave me a good taste of what that's going to be one day.
It's, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because, that time with my kids was really cool. And I have to say it was really stressful. I think we talked about this. I'm not sure if it was on air or off air, but those nights where you just lose sleep over stuff. And it's because my daughters would say, why didn't you play me? But then they'd say stuff like, why didn't you play her? And I was like, did I not play her enough? Did I do this? That kind of thing. And there were a couple of, especially when we got around to playoff time, it was stressful. But moving on to when I stopped coaching my girls and I coached, kids that I didn't know, actually, just kind of knew a couple of them tangentially and through older siblings and stuff. And that was kind of a release in a way, but like I said, I would never trade. And that was the ultimate as far as that, coaching my girls and their friends and all that. And I have those memories with them now, all being seniors in high school too. So they're all grown up. But and then seeing what are now the 8th graders being 5th graders, I'm like, oh my gosh, because I had coached 8th graders before, oh my gosh, they're so little, and they were a talented team, and they are a talented team, and they love to run and they love to hustle, and that's right up my alley. So it was fun. They love to be goofy, and that's something we all like to do. And I think the thing about that really drew me into coaching, but I always knew I wanted to be a coach, I think, but really drew me in and kind of made it like, I probably shouldn't be saying this to the athletic director who's going to try to suck me in for more years.
La 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 la.
But it's, how do you sum it up? It's like where you're, that you're making that connection with a kid and having them trust you, that you have their best interests at heart. You see things that they don't see, and ways for them to improve. You see them in practice so that they can execute in the game. And then that moment where you've been working on something for a few weeks or so, and they're not getting it. They're getting a little bit, but they're still not getting it. And then all of a sudden they're in a game and they get it, whatever it is that they do. And they're running down the court. And as they're running down the court, they turn and give you just this little side glance, and that like you lock in, like, yep, got it, and that moment you can't trade for anything. And I say to the girls, besides the fact that I'm having more fun than they are, because I get to see it and not be, in the heat of it, if you will. But just those conversations where you're talking to the girls, whether they're struggling or they're, whatever it is. And even most of all, when they were struggling, talk them through stuff, and, hopefully feel like you helped them a little bit, gave them a little confidence boost. And, that's the part that really, really makes me feel good about coaching, is you feel like you reach a kid and they, they're like your dad said, they made that hour and 15, hour and a half of their day, the best part of their day, hopefully. So.
And I know this is kind of extending on that, but I know I've got some students that I coach that, the reason they come to school is because of basketball.
Yeah.
Or because of volleyball. Like that's the part of the day that drives them to put forth the effort and be their best, is that time after school.
Yeah. Cool.
So I think, Murph, it'd be a fitting way to end this podcast. And we know everyone at home is thinking about it. And we haven't talked about this, so it's off the cuff.
Yeah.
Every great coach has catchphrases. Do you have any catchphrases from coaches that you previously had, or catchphrases you have yourself? Because I think any great coach has a great catchphrase.
My girls would be like, yeah, he says this all the time. Yeah, he says that all the time. They actually made me a shirt with all the things that I say over. Did I? And I swear for 3.5 years, maybe even 4, that I coached them all. I didn't even know what I was talking about, although I kept screaming it. But I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe I'm going to toss it to you while I think about that for a second. Yeah. Any
in high school, I had this one coach, dadgummit, and he would be just losing his mind. We had one coach who would always, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Anytime someone, would make a mistake, he would even do it in class, and you'd be across the hallway. You're like, oh, coach is pretty upset right now. Like, oh, how do you know? It's like, well, that's what we hear when we mess up a trap play on the football field. So,
Oh, I thought of one. And it's funny because I was saying this to my 8th graders recently, and I said it to an 8th grader who I've coached for 4 years, a few of them. And I coached the 5th graders this year too. And I had a 5th grader and a couple of 8th graders. And I said, girls, what do I always say to you about how I'm going to talk to you? And they all look at me like, I'm like, great, 4 years, you're not listening. But I do say it all the time, I guess they remember it when I said it, but what I find is that the kids know when you're lying to them. So I don't lie to them. I tell, it's not, you're not going to tell them you're the greatest basketball player I've ever seen. Sometimes you can, which is pretty awesome. Or you do this better than anybody I've ever seen, or whatever it is. But just tell them the truth. Like, hey, you know what? You're really good at this. And they like to hear that, and said, this is something else we can work on to make you better. And I've been blessed to over these 7 years now, to coach some pretty talented athletes. And The ones that come back, and no matter how talented they are, they want to do something better. They want to learn something new, and that forces you as a coach to figure that out. Because sometimes you can. I've had a couple athletes over the last few years who I'm starting to think to myself, is there anything I can teach them? They're really good. But there's always something, so I know we're going to talk about a future podcast, but like videos and stuff like that, and YouTube, and you look up coaching techniques and other stuff like that. It all comes back to what you want to do, but just a different way to look at things and teach them and be creative, So
I was going to say, you're starting to jump into our next topic.
Oh, I know.
Which is coaching philosophy. But before we end the show, I do actually have some catch mark phrases.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big gosh blessed person. I've taken that from my high school coach. I'm also a big fan of be the hammer, not the nail.
Yes.
Right? Be the hammer, not the nail.
Yeah.
Right. I'm also big into the nature boy Ric Flair. To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
Pro wrestling. That's fake, right?
Honestly, not gonna lie, and any of my friends that'll watch this that are pro wrestling fans, my halftime speeches or pregame speeches or postgame speeches, the only reason they come off as well as they do is because of old school wrestling promos.
Yeah. Hey, you got to be a little hokey every once in a while, right?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. Yeah. So I have a bunch of phrases. I actually have sometimes kids will, keep your foot on the accelerator. And then a kid will turn to me and go like, Coach, we can't drive. Keep going. What are you doing?
Or for us Catholic schools, beat them like Protestants.
Whoa, hey.
In the field of play.
Of course. So, Murph, it was great taking a trip down memory lane here, reviewing our youth sports moments and the things that made those moments special. Next week, we are going to, jump into kind of talking about our coaching philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
And also after that, we're going to have a special episode with some guests. So as much as people are going to love listening to you and I, it'll be really nice we get some other voices in here as well. So we're hoping you fans out there enjoyed this episode. Hopefully Murph doesn't take a bashing in the comments like he did last week. He's hoping. But thank you for joining us here on Murph and Sully's Youth Athletics Podcast. We'll see you next time.